Hey guys, I just want to do a video about changing the top and the bottom heads on your snare drum, and I just thought I'd go through it with you and show you exactly the way I do it. So I'm using a Pearl reference series. This cost me a lot of money back in the day. I think it's one of the most important drums on the kit. And because it cost me a lot of money and I think it's so important, I want to take good care of it, and that includes tuning. Now this is the way that I've not always tuned, but this is the best way that I've found to get good results, so I just thought I'd share that with you. So the first thing you want to do, in my opinion, is just inspect the bearing edge. You don't want a bearing edge that's got massive chips out of it or indentations or dips. I don't think there's much you can do about it. If there is chips and indentations, maybe sand it a little bit if you really have to. But you just obviously take good care of your stuff and it won't get damaged. So inspect the top and the bottom bearing edges first of all, just make sure there's no chips and everything. I always start with the bottom head. So I'll show you exactly what I do. So here I'm just using nothing special, just a Remo Ambassador. I've always used these. I get good results. They're pretty good. They're reasonably priced. So that's what I'm using. So along with the bearing edge, you want to inspect the hoop as well. And I find that over time an accumulation of dust and crap gets caught in there. So you just want to get a rag and just wipe out underneath the contact points of the hoop. Just make sure there's no grit and grime and dust and dirt. Just like that. All right, so one of the most important things that I believe, and this is just my opinion, is that where the skin makes contact with the bearing edge, you want to keep that as good as possible, and the less you deform the skin from its original state, like obviously this is a brand new skin and they make it pretty much perfectly round and as flat as they can get it, and that's the way you want to keep it, in my opinion, because if you keep the bearing edge and the skin as not deformed as possible, then I believe the wear rate of it will last. It'll last you a lot longer, and it won't deform, and it'll retain its shape better, basically. So all I'm doing here is tightening the lugs till they're finger tight, and I can't turn them anymore by finger. All right, so that's as much as I can get it tighten down by fingers. So you'll notice that being the snare side, you'll have these flat spots to allow for the snares to go through. So these are the snares, obviously, and they sit on these flat spots. But the way that it's tightened down now, the bearing edges are only in contact from this point here and this point here, where it doesn't get flat. So if you push that, you can see that that's kind of like that. So what I'm going to do is, I've got the top head here, which I've already marked out the pattern. So where you tune them, you adjust the lugs in this order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And having this sequence ensures that the head will go down and get clamped closer to the bearing edge in a state where you're not tightening one side down more than the other, because if you do that, then obviously the head is going to get more deformed. So this is a way of tightening so it doesn't deform so much. So I'm just going to follow that and just going to follow that sequence just to make sure that I'm tightening the head without deforming it as much as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push in the center of the head, and you can see these wrinkles here, and I'm going to tighten the lugs so that by the time I've tightened them all of them, or most of these wrinkles would have disappeared. That's not applying too much pressure to the head, and it's not stressing it out. So I'll start here. 2, 3. I'm only doing about half a turn. 4, 5, 6. So you can see that there's not many wrinkles left. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. But where there's these flat spots on the rim, they're obviously still wrinkled. That's what I like to try and get rid of. So just gently. You're not going to get rid of these without too much tightening. So at this point, there are no wrinkles left, except for on these flat spots. So to properly seat the head, what I use is a hairdryer, and I'll show you how to do that. So what I've got here is just my missus's hairdryer. Don't ask me about the hairdryer. I know nothing besides the electrical. So what I just do is set it on the lowest setting possible. So I guess that, and I only have it blowing a little bit, not like supercharged. And then all I do is I run the hairdryer probably about, I don't know, what's that, 100 mil from the bearing edge, and I aim it at the bearing edge, because the idea of that is that applying heat to this plastic surface will essentially cause it to relax, sort of thing, and become a bit more malleable. And that's what we want to do. We want to right on the contact point of the bearing edge, we want it to relax into that to mold it, if you know what I mean, like mold it to the bearing edge. So I'll turn this on and I'll just go around a few times until I start to see these wrinkles on the flat spots start to take shape to the bearing edge. You want to try and do this as slow as you can because obviously you don't want to destroy the head. So with the head still a little bit warm, what I'll do is just tighten everything down . The flat spots in this particular snare are actually really pronounced. So I'm just going to continue to tighten gradually around the bearing edge until these disappear, until these wrinkly bits disappear. At this point, I'm not really following any sort of set because the head is so low. All I'm trying to do is get rid of those wrinkles so that I can essentially mold the head to the bearing edge. So now that I've got rid of all the wrinkles and the flat spots where the snares go are now in contact, I'll just use the hairdryer again and I'll just pretty much do the same thing and ensure that the head, when you heat it up, is molding itself to the bearing edge. So that's now, it's not hot, but it's warm and you can feel it. So I'm pretty satisfied that the head now has been molded to the bearing edge, where when the head where the head contacts the entire thing, because I heated it up like that, it's now in sort of like a relaxed state, if for lack of a better term, and that's I'm pretty happy with that. So I used to tune drums ages ago just by hearing it, and I could do it semi-okay, but I got one of these things. It's called a tune bot. It's really good. it gives you a numerical value to the sound that's coming off the drum. So I recommend that you get one of these. They're really good. I'm not sure how expensive they are now, but I got this ages ago. So I'm going to tune this bottom head to 400. Alright. So when you tune the head, I don't like to use a drum key on the bottom side because it's so thin. So all I do is just use a drumstick. So 335, you basically want to tune everything the same and up to the same. You're probably asking why 400. When you buy one of these, it comes with like an app that you can get, and you can set the tuning of the drum how you want, and the app is called TuneBot. So yeah. So I'll continue to tune this up. These outside ones are a little bit lower than the rest because obviously the contact points are higher here. So I'll just tune these up a smidge until they're all the same. Pretty good. So they're all roughly the same. So now, now that I've got them all roughly the same acoustically, then we can go and just continue to tune them up. So this is where I think this becomes a little bit more important, because now that we've heated it up and molded the skin to the bearing edge, now we really want to lower the entire rim at the same rate so that it's gonna all go straight down. And I don't think you can do that by tightening like this. So as I said, this becomes a little bit more important. So I'm going to use this now. So this has got a cool feature where you can filter out the sound and make it filter out any unwanted acoustics, so it can detect the same band of sound, if you will. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to go half a turn to start off with, and I'll gradually come up. So half a turn. If you put the drum key on and notice where it is, I'm just going to go up half a turn, so that's that way, and I'm just going to make it end up that way. You don't have to be exact, but it helps to have a rough guideline. So 1 and 2, 3 is this one, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Cool, and then I'll check again. Sweet, so they're all around the same. And then you can do fine tuning a little bit when you get a little bit closer to whatever value you're looking for. In this case, it's 400, so that's pretty close. 382. I'll just do maybe like a quarter of a turn, and I'll start again. Maybe at this point it's actually faster. All right, so what I've done is I've just drawn on the sequence of the lugs to be tightened, just to make it a little bit easier for myself. So I'm just going to go a quarter of a turn. All right, I've just done a quarter of a turn, so I'm going to see what the value is. So you're going to get some that go slightly past where you want it to end up. And if you continue tightening the rest of them around that one that's too high, you'll find that this one will come up even more because you're tightening everything else, and it's going to affect that. So with this one, because this one is 405, 403, what I'll do is I'll back it off a little bit and then come up not so much. Same with this one. So at this point, it's really close to where I want it to be. So I'll just give each one a little bit more. And then I'll check again. A little bit too much. I find that the relationship of being opposite is really closely linked together, obviously, because if you tighten this side, it's going to affect the direct opposite of this circle. So if one of them is too high, then you want to back that off a fair bit, and then on the other side, if it's too low, you want to bring this one up. Yeah, so right now I'm just working on the direct opposites. So I will only focus on and adjust either one or the one directly opposite from it. That one's like that. I find that sometimes there's just like a rogue lug that will be more sensitive than the others. I'm not exactly sure why that happens. So I'm really taking my time with this and putting in the most amount of work that I'm probably ever going to put into this skin on this drum at this time, because I find that the more effort you put into doing it the very first time, because you've just molded and you've seated the head to the drum, the more time you put into it now, the easier it's going to be for you to tune later, because the longer that this drum sits on this bearing edge, the more it's going to adapt itself to the shape of this bearing edge. There's a lot of really fine inconsistencies that you don't really notice in these bearing edges, and the more time goes on, the more this will seat itself properly. And if we do it properly the first time, then it's going to make it a lot easier to tune later down the track. So that's why I'm putting so much effort, and that's why I'm really taking my time to get this seated properly using this method. At this point, I'm not too fussed about going backwards and forth across opposite edges, only because they're all really close. As you can see, you've probably been watching the numerical value between each of the lug is getting closer and closer to 400. So I think, and I'm only doing such small adjustments at a time, I don't think it's necessary at this point to go back and forth. All right, in this situation where these three that are opposite, where the snares are going to be at a higher contact point, you'll find that one side will end up higher than the other side. So in this case, I'll back these three off and I'll tighten these a little bit more, so that when I do tighten these, the head will sort of move in that direction. I'm only making really small adjustments at this point. So one thing I'll do right at the end, where I'm getting a really consistent number around, all the way around the bearing edge, I'll just go through and give it just the tiniest little nip up on each of the lugs, just to make sure that I haven't missed any and gone back and not up, if that makes sense. Keep in mind that the longer the head sits on the drum, the more it'll stretch, and eventually you're going to have to nip this all up. But the whole point in doing this is to make sure that the head is uniformly stretched. That's the reason for these opposing numbers. So we want to uniformly stretch the head onto the bearing edge. Okay, so if you notice, the number is, I'm still tightening and the number is dropping. And what I believe is happening here is the because it's a brand new head, and I'm stretching it over the bearing edge, it's gradually stretching further and further. So I think this happens more the first time that the head is used, and that's why I said you'll have to continually readjust and retune your snare the more it gets used and the longer time goes on. But I just want to reiterate that the first time that you seat these heads is the most important time for you to make sure that they're stretching evenly. See, the number is dropping even further now because as time goes on, it's stretching more and more. So I'm pretty satisfied now that this head is properly seated, and I'm pretty comfortable to leave it there until the next time I'm going to play it, and then before I play it I will retune it. And what you'll find is that if you follow this way of doing it, then the first time that you use it, or even after the first time you use it, if you tune it back up, it won't come out of tune, especially the snare side. It won't come out of tune as easy.